Welcome back to Ron Hasn't Seen. On this channel, I talk about watching movies for the first time, movies that I should have seen a long time ago, as someone who really loves all kinds of movies. Today we're talking about 1974's Chinatown, the neo-noir detective story directed by Roman Polanski and written by Robert Towne. It's Polanski's last American-produced film. The film stars Jack Nicholson as Jake Geddes and Faye Dunaway as Evelyn Mulray. It's set in 1937, and Geddes is a private detective hired to follow Hollis Mulray and prove he's having an affair. It turns out he was actually hired by someone pretending to be Mulray's wife, Evelyn, and that the pictures were published to discredit Hollis because of his opposition to a dam being built with the city's water supply. After being confronted by the real Evelyn, Geddes starts investigating who set him up and finds that Hollis has been murdered, or Hollis is dead in an apparent accident. Geddes and Evelyn think he was murdered, so he continues to investigate now under her payroll. Turns out Hollis was an ex-business partner of Evelyn's father, Noah Cross, and Cross wants Geddes to find the mistress. So during his investigation, Geddes finds that someone is using the identities of people in a retirement home to buy up cheap land during the drought north of LA, and that Cross is using the water company to make the drought worse to buy up the land cheap. It also turns out that the mistress is actually both Evelyn's sister and daughter, Catherine, and she had been raped by her father, and that's why Cross wants her back. And since Evelyn is now the chief suspect in Hollis's murder, Geddes tries to help her escape both her father and the police because, Cross just wants his granddaughter back, and Evelyn wants him not to be around that monster. So Evelyn is killed trying to escape both the police and Cross, and Geddes is just kind of released to go home, and that's the end of the movie. And that's as simple as I can make the plot. It's kind of complex. It's easy to follow as you go along, but it's not simple to describe. It's actually based on the real water wars of LA in the early part of the 20th century, and the real-life person, William Mulholland. There's stuff in LA named after him. He was the actual, chief engineer of the water district. He built the LA Aqueduct, and like Mulray's character, he built a dam that collapsed, in reality killing about 431 people, and that was the end of Mulholland's career while Mulray continued on in the movie. The film received 11 Oscar nominations, including Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor, Best Actress, Art Direction, Cinematography, Costume Design, Editing, Score, and Sound, but only won Best Screenplay for Town. The film grossed over $29 million on a $6 million budget. It's incredibly well received. It's considered a classic of the genre. Nicholson did direct and star in a 1990 sequel, The Two Jakes, but it was not really considered a hit or very good. I haven't watched it, don't plan to because of the reviews I had there. But a third sequel was supposedly written and in the works, called Geddes vs. Geddes, which was to be Jake divorcing his wife amid another whole LA land grab scheme, and this was apparently incorporated into Who Framed Roger Rabbit. This could be apocryphal. There are some sources that say this is true. Some say that's not, because Roger Rabbit came out before The Two Jakes, so maybe the script existed. It was in front of a studio exec who got it, because Roger Rabbit really didn't follow the plot of the book Who censored Roger Rabbit quite as much, just used a few of the characters. And I found this out because watching the film, all I could think of was Roger Rabbit. It was foremost on my mind because, regardless of its ties to Geddes versus Geddes, it really had a lot of the same plot elements. A private detective being used, and then a murder involving the target of the investigation, corrupt officials trying to buy land to promote themselves and shutting down or messing with a public utility. Just really similar elements, and it's clear Chinatown not only influenced Roger Rabbit, but a ton of films after it. And that's kind of whether the writers of these films did it as direct, or it's just something that they knew. And that's what a lot of these films are, is that I'm choosing are these kind of films that are in a public consciousness that a lot of other films reference later on, whether you know it or not. Chinatown itself is gripping and full of enough turns to keep you guessing, but the plot's not hard to follow as it's going around. But it does lead to what I would consider a kind of anticlimactic ending. We're left a bit empty, and I think no one really gets punished, and the bad guys get away with, and it just kind of felt sudden. Not something that I thought plot out. This is a little different than Town's original ending, which had Evelyn killing her father, but because they don't want to reveal why, she just goes to jail and nothing's ever really revealed. But Town himself liked Polanski's ending better, and both fit the noir feel, and that kind of 70s kind of, the bad guy's not always going to get punished. There are no real heroes. That kind of sensibility I'm getting out of a lot of these 70s films. And this is the last time I'm going to mention Polanski because of his troubles. I've talked about whether you cut out watching art before on this channel, so that's going to be it. But I actually want to talk about how maybe the violence in these movies comes from the violence before the Polanski incident, where, people talk about the Manson murders and Sharon Tate, but I think it wasn't something I knew till much later that was his wife and his house where all this occurred. So I wonder how much that influenced him in choosing these kind of dark films at this point. I mean, Rosemary's Baby was before that, and it was very dark, but I just really wonder that kind of violence influenced his film here. There are two other projects involving Chinatown that have tried to take off in the last few years, and they're kind of lagging in development hell, as the best I could tell. David Fincher has set up a prequel series about Jake Geddes, as a cop, and how he sets up his own private detective agency, and that was going to be a Netflix series. And then Ben Affleck was set to adapt and direct a book based on the making of the film. So those projects are still hanging out there. They might happen. Those seem more interesting to me than the two Jakes. Now, I really liked the movie in itself. It kept me watching. It kept me gripped. As I said, the turns were not predictable, but not so out of the way that made the movie hard to follow. Everything followed a nice linear path in the storytelling, but, nothing you could see going forward. It was gripping in that kind of detective sense, and I really enjoyed that. I don't like, a detective story that telegraphs its ending too much. I thought the acting and the direction were great. The cinematography didn't seem anything special, but that might be more because of the sensibility of what came after is what I grew up on. So maybe the cinematography was something special at the time because there was some discussion between Polanski and the studio on who to use as a cinematographer. He wanted to bring in, I forget the guy's name from Rosemary's Baby. The studio didn't want that because they thought the two of them together would be too much control. So that aspect I thought was fine. It just didn't stand out to me. I thought it was a pretty film. I thought it had a great sensibility, used light and darkness in different scenes. I like that it is almost first person without being first person, as we never see a scene from anything other than kind of Jake's point of view. We never see other characters talking and then Jake finding out what they're doing later. This is a great way to tell a detective story, and I think it's a great way to tell a lot of stories where you leave suspense without having to do a weird first-person camera view. It's it's not that uncommon. I think most of the first few Potter books are told that way. You never get anything that Harry's not there for, so you're getting it from his perspective without it actually being a first-person narrative. As I was saying, Nicholson, one of my favorite actors of all time, just between this and Joker and One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, Butch is at Eastwick. These are things I grew up on and loved, and he's just great in this. And Faye Dunaway is great in this. John Huston, just really good acting all around. Great character acting from, I forget the guy's name, he played Paulie in Rocky. There's a lot of great just little moments in here. and it's not overly violent. It's not a bloodbath. It's not, an action movie. It's a great detective story, and everything leads to that. So I really do recommend it. It's not even quite as dark as a lot of these 70s movies in tone, but it still kind of leaves you feeling a little empty inside, which I think it's designed to do. So I really do recommend watching this. It's a great example of neo-noir. Even more so as a detective story than something like The French Connection, which has a little more action-y elements to it with the car chase. This has a few, but not to that scale. The action is there to set up more tension in the plot, like during the investigations when he encounters the farmers who don't like the water department. Like, all of this stuff just leads to a great gripping story that doesn't need giant set pieces to hold your attention. So yeah, go ahead and watch this. I do really recommend it, and I think it has earned its place as a classic. Well, that's kind of it for my review of Chinatown. Next week is The Deer Hunter. But thank you guys for watching. Ron hasn't seen. Please like and subscribe below, and I will see you next week. Thank you.